My name is Wassan Al-Khudhairi. I'm the Hugh Call Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art at the Birmingham Museum of Art. I started at the Birmingham Museum of Art almost 3 years ago. Previously, I was one of the co-artistic directors of the Gwangju Biennial in South Korea, and I was the founding director at Mathaf, the Arab Museum of Modern Art in Doha, Qatar, and now I'm in Birmingham. You know, the thing about Shift was a very, just as you've just described, like it was about kind of connecting with the local community, the local creative community, and thinking cross-disciplinary. So not thinking about the creative community only in terms of visual art, but thinking about it in terms of, music and dance and literature and poetry and, thinking about it in a kind of holistic way. And then thinking about how maybe when you put two people together who come from two different trajectories of art, how their practice might influence or push one another. So, maybe you're a poet and you are paired with a visual artist, how does the practice of those two people working together push one another? And hopefully create some kind of a new project out of that collaboration. The issues of kind of finding a space or creating a space that people feel comfortable to come in is that, at the museum, for example, there's definitely this these big doors you walk into this big museum, and there's this expectation that you should act a certain way and that you should know some stuff. And I think that, the desire for us to shift in this sort of space that is just usually this empty space. It was empty. We used it for 5 months. It's empty again. So it's a place that people never noticed, but when we activated it, people noticed it, came in, and there's nothing about it that's fancy. I mean, we had to change the carpet because there was mold, but there was nothing really that we did to make it fancy. We tried to keep the space feeling, just sort of democratic and open. And I think by involving people in the community and giving them the space, and then us as the people doing the project going into the background, was the way that people were not afraid or not intimidated, because it's like, I know Marilee, she's an artist and I've seen her stuff before at local art shows, so I'm going to go check out what Marilee is doing. And maybe that's, that was the collaboration where Marilee was working with this scientist at the university who does data visualizations of a cell research. So, that was the collaboration, which was super weird, but okay, I know Marilee, so I'm there because I'm friends with Marilee and I like Marilee, or I've seen her work before, and then I get introduced to all this other stuff. And, there's no expectation that I have to know anything about art or anything like that. So a lot of times we would notice that it was, the particular people involved in the project brought their community or their group of people. And so if you just figure out who the key players are in your community that are, doing things that people know about, and it doesn't have to just be visual art, and kind of invite them into the space and make them feel like it's their space. And then they will feel so good about it that they'll invite their friends and their community. And those people won't have any apprehensions because they are like, well, I trust that person. That's my friend, and they really like this project. So if they're having a good experience, I should go check it out. It's letting it be the community space. And of course, as the administrator, you're structuring it. You have a structure, you have a budget, you keep the kind of things working, but you have to be really, you have to be humble and say, this isn't about me. This isn't even about my institution. This is about just creating physically a platform for people to make things and meet each other. So that's kind of the way that I thought about the project. Go talk to people in the community and see what they would want. I learned really quickly that artists felt like there were no spaces to show work, and people felt like also there was no studio spaces for them. So I was like, okay, that should be a component. Let's make that a component because, people are really interested in that. And then my collaborator, who was the librarian, was like, people are really into zines right now. And there's a local zine library, we should bring that into it. I'm like, awesome, let's do that. So, a lot of it is about really listening to what people say they need or want, and then trying to then figure out how you can give that to them in a constructive, structured format that feels like it could be productive. At the museum, there are a lot of different kinds of ways that I try to always think about my context and the public when I try and think about what kinds of programs and exhibitions or works of art to acquire or to show at the museum. Because ultimately the museum is for the community and for the public. That's the main purpose of the museum, in my opinion. We've done certain things like a public program series that I initiated with Art Papers magazine in Atlanta. They have a program called Art Papers, collaborating and doing Art Papers Live in Birmingham, where we come together and we pick an artist who is doing something interesting anywhere, not just Alabama, but just anywhere, that feels relevant to conversations that I feel people are having in Birmingham. And then we have them come here and either do a talk or a performance. Most recently, we had an artist named Bethany Collins, who lives in Chicago now, and a lot of her practice has to do with writing and text and words. So she was very interested in the work of Natasha Trethewey, who is a poet laureate and a wonderful writer and poet. And so we brought the two of them together, and they did a discussion. And that was great because then we had, in the audience, we had all of these people who, maybe they don't normally come to the museum for art stuff, but they're really into poetry, and now they're at the museum, so they're, maybe they'll come back after that. So, really thinking about how to draw people from different areas to come into the museum and see that visual arts can be part of their space of inspiration and space of, collaboration. And then I curated an exhibition that opened a few weeks ago, about a month ago, called Third Space, and it's an exhibition that uses the permanent collection to kind of to make this sort of conversation open up about how the American South is connected to the global South. Again, that idea came out of thinking about where I am and where this collection is, and how can Birmingham be connected globally. So it's sort of like, it's like a multi-pronged approach, It's like you have to do a little bit of a lot of different things and try and kind of think about what do people want to see and how can we be relevant? How can we do things in the exhibition space or in the museum that is responding to current issues, current conversations, in the country and in the world. It's an encyclopedic collection, so there's actually African collection and Asian collection that's, antiquities from Japan, China, Korea, and Southeast Asia. We have the largest Wedgwood collection outside of England. We have a really big decorative arts collection, American, European, and then I'm in charge of modern and contemporary. It's very encyclopedic. I only curate and work with modern and contemporary work, but we have curators for all the other sections. Numbers are one part of it. You can't deny them. They're one part of the conversation. But I really think it's about for Shift, it was how did the collaboration between the two people go? Were they able to do something new? If they were able to do something new and they felt pushed by one another, then that to me was a success. And also just, the other day I ran into someone and they're like, are you guys going to do Shift again? I really liked it. Can it happen again? Mm-hmm. That's success for me. And sometimes you can't see success right away. You kind of have to wait a little bit to see, what kind of impact the project had over time. And is it something that resonated with people? So those kinds of metrics are really hard because people do want numbers. When you do grants, that's what they want. But I think it's about kind of creating relationships, and for me, one of the ways that a lot of those people came to the exhibition opening that happened, 6 months later. That was my goal, is to take that community and bridge them back to the museum. And that ended up happening. We ended up inviting a lot of the same people that were coming to Shift to the museum for the exhibition opening, and a lot of those people came. So I think that was another way of saying, okay, but we had to wait 6 months to see if that was going to happen. So sometimes, you know, you only have metrics at first. You only have, okay, X number of people came. But, you know, sometimes when you wait a little bit, you start to see like, okay, this resonated in these ways. People are still talking about it, and it's been a year. That means that people didn't forget about it. It had some kind of an impact, you know? You kind of have to be creative in trying to think about what are, you know, what, and trying to envision before it starts, like, what do you hope is going to happen? You know, I hoped that people would meet each other across disciplines. You know, and I hoped that new work would come out of it, which it did. People made new work, which is cool. And that those people would come to the museum, and that kind of happened too. I think some of the failures or the slippages were not all the collaborations were very good. Some of them were better than others. So January was the first one, was the hardest one because it was the first one. So by the time we got to like May, those artists had already been talking to each other informally for several months. So by the time it was their turn, they already were like ready to go. And then also like one pairing just didn't work. Like the personalities clashed, and we had to really step in, and I had to mediate those personalities, and that was really complicated, you know? So it's, you know, it wasn't perfect, and there's always something to learn, you know? But in the end, I would say overall, in the bigger sense, it was an impactful, you know, project.